We hop into a van and we just drive, and the research team doesn't know where we're going. They just go, we're going to go in this direction and let's see who we run across.
Oh
We
my goodness.
drive and we come up on a gare, and we pull up, and they jump out and they talk to the family and they say, "Hey, we've got a handful of American or Western
Right.
graduate students in this van. Can we come in?"
Hey folks, that voice you just heard was Dave Johnston, and this is Dragonfly Conversations. In this podcast, we highlight everyday people making a real difference in conservation and education. My name is Kevin Madison, and through my work with Project Dragonfly, I get to share their inspiring stories. Today, Dave challenges the idea that you need to be a biologist to save a species. He is the Director of Professional Development at the Wildlife Conservation Society. We talk about the hidden ecology of New York City, the rugged beauty of Mongolia, and why teachers are the ultimate lever for change. Let's get into it. Okay, welcome to the podcast, Dave.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to start a while back when I was the instructor, the Miami instructor for the urban ecology course with WCS and the Bronx Zoo. And it was so much fun for me to, be based here in Ohio, where I live now, but to be connecting to this really cool, exciting course you guys were offering that had experiential learning throughout Manhattan. I think
Yeah.
out in Queens and Brooklyn.
Yep.
So it's so gratifying for me as a former New Yorker. I guess you're always a New Yorker, but like to reconnect with those places and to see what you guys are doing. What was that like for you? Like leading that course, even organizing and thinking about what you wanted to do in New York City when you're talking about urban ecology.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess first to start off, yeah, you're always a New Yorker. You don't get to if you're really a true New Yorker, you're a New Yorker. So you don't have to qualify that. You're still one of us. But yeah, the urban ecology course was really a great course for us to develop. When we were looking at the courses that Miami offers for the graduate program and thinking about which ones make a lot of sense to have experiential learning opportunities in New York, urban ecology just felt like a no-brainer for us. New York City is one of the largest cities in the country, and it is a city of islands, and people don't think about that, right? Most people don't think of New York City as a city of islands, but we are. So there's some really interesting complex ecology that's happening there. We've got wetlands, we've got this terrible combined sewer system that causes all sorts of ecological issues. It was developed in the 1700s, and we're still dealing with it today. So it felt like a really great course for students to really be thinking about the practical applications of ecology. They're going to be doing their master plans mostly in the New York region. So this is the setting for us. We can think about, global biomes, and they should know about that. But from a practical standpoint, New York City is really where they're going to be doing a lot of their work. So that exploring that really unique set of ecological issues is was really important. So we're really proud of how that course came about. We mostly use Jamaica Bay as our
Mm-hmm.
research site. So Jamaica Bay, for people who aren't familiar, Jamaica Bay is the largest wetlands area in New York City. It's in Queens, Brooklyn area, right around JFK Airport, and you know the way that the construction has developed around it. There's some really interesting patterns where certain neighborhoods and certain demographics that live in certain neighborhoods have led to very different developmental outcomes around Jamaica Bay. So if you're on one side of Jamaica Bay, you can feel like you're on the Jersey Shore. And if you're at another part of Jamaica Bay, you can feel like you're deep in a very, dense urban environment. And then in another part of Jamaica Bay, it feels like you're in a suburban neighborhood. And that's all part of this same bay within New York City. So that felt like a really good place for us to really examine the question, this is what drives this particular course is what impact does urbanization have on the ecology of Jamaica Bay. And then we, that's our site. So we're out in Jamaica Bay. Students fight over who gets to wear their waders, and they're out there with seining nets,
Ooh.
and they're collecting air quality, and they're really doing the work out there. And we're not at the zoo, we're not at the aquarium, we're in the bay studying it, and it leads to some really cool, interesting learning on their end.
Yeah, and I used to go to Jamaica Bay, the wildlife refuge area, like, to see life birds and
Yeah,
so many cool things that I saw there, from oyster catchers to various like sandpiper things and
yeah,
um definitely things I had never seen in New York City. I'd never seen in my life
yeah,
when I was younger. But I think it's cool how you're using it as a lab for urban settings as well, the neighborhoods of Jamaica Bay, right?
that's right.
Jamaica Bay, not just as the refuge, but this whole sort of ecosystem within an ecosystem.
Yep,
Um, and yeah, seining. Okay, so they're pulling nets out of the water. You're really getting dirty. You're doing
yep.
the yeah, what kind of things are they finding or any memories of some unique moments or interactions? Are people like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we definitely we definitely get a lot of the like, what are you doing here? So, depending on where we are. So typically what we do is we have multiple sites, several kind of low urbanization sites, several kind of medium urbanization sites, and several high urbanization sites. It's kind of a unique course in this way where the students, we meet at the aquarium in the morning, they're in research teams, and they're just checking out research gear, and then they're heading out and they're doing this work. I show them how to do it, and then I get out and try to visit them at their sites, but I can't be at all six sites at the same time. So a lot of times it's the students that are out there doing this work on their own without me, and then they're coming back at the end of the day, checking their stuff back in. We're debriefing how it's going, and then we're analyzing that data together. So yeah, so I get some wild stories from them about, who are you? Like where they say people came up to them and are like, "Who are you? Why are you here? What are you doing?" And they can kind of explain what they're doing. Not all of the locations are in the park areas. Like sometimes we're just in neighborhoods. So we're just on Canarsie Pier, just in
Right.
the, there's just people fishing on the pier, and there's parties on the pier, and there's all this stuff happening, and then there's our group of students that are there with like buckets that they're throwing over and hauling up water, and they're doing water quality testing and air quality testing and doing transects of the berm in between the Bronx River Parkway, or sorry, the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway and the pier. So yeah, it's kind of fun, and it's yeah, they have some really great experiences. For the most part, I think the biggest takeaway from the students is it feels, especially at the graduate level, it feels like a no-brainer that yes, urbanization will impact ecology. I don't think many of our students, including those who are born and raised New Yorkers, really understand the disparity between different sites around the Bay. I think that's a big takeaway for them is really when we tend to monolith areas in New York. We're really
Mm,
bad about that, where we look at neighborhoods or areas and we just kind of treat them all as if everything in that neighborhood is the same. And I think this is a really great example of there are so many areas connecting to Jamaica Bay that when you say Jamaica Bay is impacted by human activity, seeing how just a few miles away it is a completely different set of
yeah.
outputs
Yeah,
is really interesting for them. Yeah.
that's such a great point. Like I feel like New York City, a lot of people don't realize it's a biodiversity hotspot. Many areas are like the best spots you can be birding. Certainly
Yeah.
Central Park is well known for that, but there's all these hotspots, Jamaica Bay, Pelham Bay Park in the Bronx. These incredible, like the biodiversity, just purely objectively, the biodiversity is off the charts. And then, just like you said, a few blocks over, it's a biodiversity cold spot. It's like
Yep.
nothing because of the development, the level of
Yeah.
development and concrete and so forth. So yeah, really seeing that urban areas can have biodiversity around. So I love this like description of the experiential learning and then getting their equipment, going out. But what about the in-person experiences at the zoo or the aquarium? Like, are there some special moments you've had with students either going behind the scenes or certain exhibits where they really connect or connecting with scientists there at the Wildlife Conservation Society?
That's a great question. So, we tend to shorthand in a lot of our advertising for Advanced Inquiry Program, Bronx Zoo, but it really
Yeah.
is beyond that. So I'm glad that you mentioned, Wildlife Conservation Society versus Bronx Zoo specifically, because,
Right.
we have four zoos and an aquarium. And at this point, we're running AIP experiential learning at almost all of those sites. So it really does allow us to tap into such a broader network of experts at WCS. It's not just limited to who happens to be at the Bronx Zoo, but we can really, use all of New York in so many ways.
I know you guys have also gone outside of the city, so I
Yeah, we
want to
do.
give you a chance. Like, let's talk about. I don't know if it's the Coyote projects or the Adirondack stuff you guys do.
Yeah, that's our regional ecology course. So very similar to how we have our urban ecology course, and we're using New York City as a lab. I think a common misconception about New York as a state is, everybody thinks of New York City, and that's just the small corner of this massive, beautiful, forested state in the Northeast. So we also want to, explore that and look at that. Not all of our students are from New York City. Many of our students are from, other parts of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. We get students from Baltimore up to Connecticut or sort of Rhode Island and out through central Pennsylvania that all come to the Bronx Zoo or WCS facilities in New York City for AIP. So we want to make sure that the learning isn't so specific to New York City that it's not applicable to
Hmm.
students in other places. So, looking at New York State as a learning lab as well is an approach that we've taken for a couple of the courses. I think the regional ecology course is probably the most interesting on that. We treat that almost like a mini Earth expedition. So it's almost, for if anyone doesn't know, Earth expeditions are the Project Dragonfly courses that have these experiential learning components that happen in international settings. We do a similar kind of approach. It's much more truncated. It's only 4 days in the field, but we do 4 days in the field in the Adirondacks. So it is about a 6 hour drive from New York City. We meet up at the Bronx Zoo in the morning on the first day of the experiential learning. We students leave their cars in the parking lot for a couple of days, and then
Road trip.
we road trip. Yeah, we load up into vans and we drive up about 6 hours to the Adirondacks, and we do some work there. We use the campus from SUNY, which is the State University of New York. They have an environmental science and forestry program. So they have a satellite campus in the Adirondacks. So we utilize that facility. We partner with some of the researchers that are there who are doing that work. And students are essentially doing a very similar study that they do in the urban ecology course, but they're doing it up in the Adirondacks. So they're looking at tree forests, tree communities, and looking at the impacts of various drivers on the ecological health up there. So they're out in the forest, they're collecting data on the trees, they're looking at tree health, they're looking at air quality, water quality, soil quality, all of that. And they're doing that at several locations around the Adirondacks so that they can get a sense of, how do the same principles apply, but in, more rural settings like the Adirondacks. And it actually works really nicely. Those two courses, they're both elective courses. So some students don't take either one of them, some take just one, but a lot of students choose to take both of them, particularly if they're really ecologically interested. Those courses work really nice as a complementary to each other because it's really understanding these foundational principles for ecological study and then applying them in two very different settings and seeing two very different outcomes that come out of it. So, and then of course, while we're up there, it's not all just, elbow deep in soil. We're also canoeing and doing some hiking and doing night hikes and doing all that kind of fun stuff that you do on an experiential,
Yeah.
multi-day
Yeah,
overnight trip as well.
right. It's one of those funny things. Like I feel like things like that when you do them, when you actually like commit, like, yes, I'm gonna go do this 4 days. Leading up to it, I don't know. Like for me, I'm always like, because you're leaving your creature comforts,
Yeah.
your house and
Yep.
your Netflix or whatever thing you're into. But then like you have so many crazy, amazing experiences on
Yeah.
those types of things. That's always been my experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking
Yeah, we
of
we
which,
this.
yeah,
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say this last group. The last time we taught the course, it was a bunch of students that were my advisees that went on the course.
yeah.
I did not go on the course. I don't teach that course either. It sounds like I don't teach anything, but I do. I promise. We're just not
Dave,
talking
what
about
do
my
you
courses.
do?
But this was also a course that I don't teach. And then they came back, and then they were all like texting each other and like had inside jokes, and I did not I was like, this is I now feel excluded, and I
You had
don't like
FOMO.
this. Yeah, because they bonded so much on this experience while they were up there. It really is. And look, it's very similar to a lot of the things that happen in Earth expeditions, where it's like
Right.
when we say you don't have Wi-Fi, we really mean you don't have Wi-Fi. We don't mean like there is like, oh, there's, we just don't want you to use it. There are dead spots up in the Adirondacks where we're like, yeah, when you're in the cabins, you don't have Wi-Fi during that time.
Yeah.
And
And
that
same with
really
that.
does put people out of their
We're
comfort zone.
right. Oh, totally. More than so many things now. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Like it really has changed. So, and I also know, and I started to segue there to Earth expeditions. You've taught our Mongolia course
Yeah.
for a while. You and I taught the Belize course a number of years
Yep.
ago. So, like, what's it been like for you? It sounds like you have such a cool job because like you're there in Jamaica Bay now. You've got these connections, these other Adirondacks,
Yeah.
these cool things, the Bronx Zoo, Queens Wildlife. All right, now Mongolia, you're also going to. What's that about?
Yeah. Well, I do have a cool job, and I'm always very appreciative of WCS for the work that I get to do,
Hmm.
and I do get to travel and do some cool stuff. So I will acknowledge that and appreciate that. I am obsessed with the Mongolia course. I love it
Hmm.
so much. And every year I think. Maybe I'll talk to Jill and see if I could do a different course. And then I go and I'm just like, nah, I don't
Nope.
want to leave any of them. I don't want to leave any of these people. Like I genuinely been connected with the partners, the in-country partners in Mongolia so much. Yeah, that course is really, really amazing. My first time, so just a quick story on it. So one of the things that Project Dragonfly does when you're an AIP partner site is we have professional development funding that Project Dragonfly provides for us for our own
Mhm.
learning. And one of the things that we can apply that towards is to go and observe an Earth expedition if you've never been on one. So I absolutely wanted to do that. I'd never been on one. I advise students, so I do want to know what that experience is really going to be like. Um, and then in typical me fashion, rather than being like, I'm gonna go and observe the course that seems like the most interesting to me or the place I want to go to. I didn't do it that way. I looked to see like, okay, where has WCS never been before? Where have we never had any students go? Like, what's an open spot in our mind? And this at this point, we had only been in the program for maybe 3 years. So we didn't have that many students that had done Earth expeditions, but nobody had ever gone to Mongolia. So there were several, but of the ones that nobody had gone to, I was like, well, Mongolia, I don't know when I'll ever end up in Mongolia. So this feels like a great opportunity for me to see something kind of cool and also uh, bring some knowledge back to WCS that we don't have right now. We don't know what the Mongolia course is really like from a lived experience. And it just, went and again, in typical me fashion, was like, well, if you're going to send me, let me teach too. So I worked with the instructional team. I did a little bit of teaching while I was there, even though I was just an observer, and just really fell in love with that course. The there have been a few places that I have been in my travels in the world that are arresting to look
Mm,
at. And
mm.
Alaska is one of them. You just can't, your mind almost can't take in the expansiveness of the area that you're in. And for me, that's Mongolia as well.
Wow.
You can see
Yeah.
photos of it, but you really can't understand how, I mean, it's called the land of big sky for a reason.
Right.
It is so vast and so open. And once we get out of Ulaanbaatar, so we start in Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital. Once we head out and we're out in the research sites, when I say we don't see people, we see our research team and that's it. I mean, there
Yeah.
really are not people. And that's very different than some of the other Earth expeditions. We did Belize and that's a completely different thing. You're driving through Belize and there's, shops and stores and people and no,
Yeah.
in
Music
Mongolia,
and all that.
yep.
Yeah.
Mongolia, you leave and you are in the steppe for the majority of that. Now we do have a couple of places where we drive through and resupply and do some stuff, but days can go on end where you don't see anybody except for us, just our
And
group.
you're sleeping in yurts there? Like
Yeah,
actual.
so in Mongolia, they're called ger. So
Okay.
GER, ger is what they're called. But yeah, they are essentially that's yurts. That's what they are. So we have two primary research campsites that we go to, and the first one we are in ger. We tell our students this is a hard course to pack for, also because students are like, what's the weather like? And I'm just like, yes, it is weather. So, they also have to pack a sleeping bag and a air mattress and whatever they need for the ground because you're sleeping in a yurt in a ger for the first couple of days. We have no
So
running
cool.
water, no electricity. You're sleeping on the ground. It's very rugged. No Wi-Fi, obviously, no cell service while you're out there. Um, and then the second half of the course, we're in a more settled
Right.
research camp in Hustai National Park. So that has like bunkhouses and like a shower that has like a solar panel
Mhm.
to like heat it up and get you warm water and it's a slightly different experience the second half. But yeah, that first half is really rugged. And speaking of weather, it's fun because I never know what I'm in gonna get. My first year going, it was in a zut, which is a drought, and I didn't know any better. I just thought that's what Mongolia looked like. I thought it was brown and dusty. And then I came back
Uh-huh.
my second time, and it was had just had tremendous rain, so it was lush and beautiful and green and flowers and fragrant, and it felt like a completely different place than the first time. And then over my years of going there, we've also now had torrential downpours that led to flooding. We've had snow in June. We've had
Yep.
so hot that it's 90 plus degrees and there's black flies everywhere. Like you really don't know what you're gonna get, and I think that's kind of part of the adventure of this particular course is like it's gonna be some weather that I can tell you, but I don't.
it's 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 called an expedition for a reason, right? Like it
Yeah,
harkens back to this adventure. And I know to people listening, like it can sound a little scary, but it also sounds so exciting and so awesome. And I know the Mongolian wild horse, right? Like
yeah,
when I think of Bronx Zoo and
yeah.
when I worked there, the exhibit was right there by education. I think it's changed
It
maybe.
has.
Okay.
Yeah,
But so cool. Like you were talking about the WCS connection, going somewhere without as much, but in this sort of weird roundabout way, this connection to the wild horses and conservation of them.
yep,
And the other thing I think about is, much of humanity and the history of humans, like we're nomadic societies, and even getting a chance to go somewhere where there's at least a connection to that history, even
yeah.
if not fully actualized now. Like, I just think that's a really cool thing to be exposed to culturally.
Yeah, I will say so. For people who know me, my background, I'm not an ecologist. I'm a conservationist,
Mhm.
but I'm not an ecologist, right? I'm a social scientist. That's what I do. So the aspect of this course that I probably my favorite is exactly that. So we do when we're in the first camp in the Mongolia Earth Expedition, we basically have three kind of foci that we focus on. So one is on wildlife. animals. One is on wildlife botany, and then the third one is on the cultural component of it. And
Mhm.
students kind of rotate and get a chance to do all three of those working with the field team. The cultural component is really cool. So, Mongolia is a really can be a rugged place to live. And over time, people live in they live far apart from each other. There's a lot of weather, it's nomadic. So what came out of that culturally is this idea of, you never know when you might need to, you're riding a horse across the steppe for 2 days and you see a ger and you want to stop in and you want to warm up and you want to get a break from the elements. So culturally, that's normal and accepted. You can just roll up on someone's home
Yeah.
without notification and just say, hey, I'm here. Can I come in? And culturally, it's baked into the nomadic culture of Mongolia that you stop what you're doing and you welcome them in and
Mhm.
you give them some treats, you make them some milk tea, maybe you give them some whey or some cookies, and they warm up, and then they don't stay too long, you don't abuse it, you stay for like a half an hour, and then you,
Right.
you go. And the idea is, of course I will do that for you because I might need someone to do that for me in the future. And it's just created this, it's created this really wonderfully inviting culture, and our students get to experience that. We do that as one of our rotations. We hop into a van and we just drive, and the research team doesn't know where we're going. They just go, we're going to go in this direction and let's see who we run across.
Oh
We'll
my goodness.
drive and we come up on a gare, and we pull up and they jump out and they talk to the family and they say, hey, we've got a handful of American or Western
Right.
graduate students in this van. Can we come in? And I've only once had that not been accepted immediately as like, yeah, of course they can come in. And
Right.
they'll stop what they're doing, and students can come in and they can visit them in their home. They get welcome in that same way, but it also is a place for them to ask questions, to say, oh, you're a herder, you're a nomadic herder. Well, we've been studying the impact of, the rise of capitalism on the demand for cashmere sheep. Or cashmere goats, and how has that impacted you as a herder? What does that mean for you? We've looked at how the steppe has been degraded as cashmere goat herds are increasing over time. So, what has been your experience? What's your lived experience? And students really get that authentic um, perspective from nomadic families about what their lived experience is like in this setting. And then those families can ask questions to the students, which is really great because they'll be like, oh, you're from, yeah, New York, I've
Yes.
heard of
It
New
was
York. Oh, LA, I know LA, right? Like, and then you can see that human connection. That's really kind of cool. It's my favorite part of this course for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's reminds me of the India course that I instruct in, and we go into some pretty rural villages and have those types of interactions. It's always amazing to me how warm and welcoming
Yeah.
humans are,
Yep.
no matter where you go, and across cultural divides that you would think would be a problem, and it's actually not. It's actually this incredible experience. So, as a social scientist, and I kind of want to ask you, when you think of conservation biology, a lot of times people just picture like, radio tracking and an elephant and out
Yeah.
doing these things. And more, and I think within dragonfly in particular, we're seeing the rise of this like the importance of social science, talking to humans, talking to
Right.
those herders who were just talking about. I feel like this is kind of what you are about, Dave. Like
Yeah.
like you're
Yeah.
you're yeah, like you're an
Yeah.
educator, you're a facilitator, you've got your PhD now. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Like not too long ago, you got that. And I feel like you're kind of your thing is like talking to people and listening. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you want to, I don't know where to start with that exactly. Like it could be
Yeah.
your work with IZE, it could be your dissertation, it could be what you're doing with the AIP, whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think what I would say about it is I agree with you that I think the social aspects of conservation are finally getting a lot more focus. And I say that as a somewhat biased because I am a social science person. But, the reality is that conservation is it's an anthropogenic issue, right? We have caused the conservation crisis. Humans have caused that, right? So humans need to solve that. And there are so many drivers for why conservation crisis looks the way it does, whether it's around climate, whether it's around trafficking, whether it's around habitat fragmentation, deforestation, all of these pieces, there is a biological component to it, right? And that's where conservation biology plays a role. But all of the reasons why people are taking those actions are often driven from other reasons. Like they're not humans aren't taking the action from a biological standpoint when they're trafficking. They're taking it from an economic standpoint for the most part, which is very much a social construct and very much a social issue. So that's where this idea of conservation education, conservation engagement, community engagement, conservation training, conservation finance, the same way that there's conservation biology, there are all of these other aspects of conservation that we need to attend to. Because if all we're doing is studying the impact and what's driving it, we need to also, we're never gonna solve the human driving pieces of it unless we really dig into that as well. And I think that's really where the social sciences come in, right? Now my work is mostly around education. I'm a conservationist, I am an educator, I'm a social scientist, I hold all of those identities. And most of my research is around conservation education, specifically around teacher training and teacher learning, recognizing that it's a tough gig to be a teacher. There's a lot of demands, there's a lot of asks on you as a teacher, and most teachers do care about conservation, but if it's not in the standards or it's not easily accessible to them, they don't know where to begin to tell those stories. They don't know how to tell those stories and bring those stories into their classroom in ways that doesn't feel like extra work, which is often how it's framed. It's like, great, teach your whole curriculum and also teach about wildlife trafficking. And they're like, when, where, how, right? So a lot of my work is around how to do that in ways that aren't an extra ask. How do we embed these into existing curricula and utilize conservation as the lens through which they are studying these concepts that they have to study anyway, but we're doing it through the examples, and the lens is conservation, is what we're doing with it. And the reason why I think that's so important, and I say this all the time, and this is not a knock on people who teach children, that is so important and so valuable. And if you think about it, like everyone who's a conservationist now can probably think back to a learning experience that they had as a kid that put them on this pathway. So that is important. But for me, I could sit in front of a classroom of 30 students, children, and I can teach them, and 30 children now know the concept that I'm teaching. Or I can sit in front of a classroom of 30 teachers, each of whom have 30 to 100 students, depending on what grade level they teach. And now 100 and or 90 or no, nine, yeah, whatever the number is, like up to like 1,500 people are learning these concepts as those teachers then bring them back to their students. And then that happens every year. So this year I have 100 students that I'm teaching, and then next year I have 100 students that I'm teaching. And it's the magnitude impact that teachers have. And I don't think teachers are credited as being the key lever in that way in conservation that they really are, right? They can
Yeah.
inspire hundreds and hundreds, thousands in some cases of students over their teaching career, right?
Yeah, I realized that, and I presented this at our graduation event just this past weekend at the Cincinnati Zoo. We had a focus on teachers in Dragonfly because we have the Ohio Teacher of the
Yeah.
Year
Yep.
currently is a Earth Expeditions veteran, Dragonfly veteran, Chris Mansour. Anyway, I realized and I compiled that Dragonfly has had someone to participate from over 2,000 schools over the history of this program. So you're right. I mean, that impact and the ripples it creates can be really really long lasting and go in some unique ways. So what about your stuff with the you also work with the International Zoo Educators. So you're
Mhm.
working with teachers and you have a teaching background,
I do.
I believe from New York City. So and what is your work with the zoo educators been like?
Yeah, so I do have a teaching background. My work at the Wildlife Conservation Society is really to oversee our teacher education programming and our higher ed programming, and most of that is working in the New York City region at our parks, but also working collaboratively with our research teams around the world to think about how do we tell those conservation stories to a larger population. And I'll just touch really quickly on we have this really wonderful resource that I'm going to plug, and it's free, so don't feel bad. I'm throwing you a curveball. I'm going to plug a free resource.
Let's
So
go.
if there's any educators listening, it's called WCS Presents Field Site. And Field Site is our free digital resource for teachers. We tell global conservation stories. I've partnered with, at this point, around 20 different country teams of boots on the ground researchers to create basically documentary style videos that come with pre-written standards aligned curriculum that you can bring right into your classroom and utilize in your classroom, and that's a big part of what I do. And a fun kind of circle moment on this is I have now partnered with our WCS Mongolia team multiple times on telling field site stories, and I met them initially when I went to Mongolia for Earth Expedition. I was like, well, if I'm going to be in Mongolia for an Earth Expedition, let me, ring up my colleagues and get to know them. And now I've worked really closely with my colleagues who are literally thousands and thousands of miles away, and we've told those conservation stories to thousands of people around the world. We've got users in over 50 countries around the world that are using FieldSite to teach about
Yeah,
conservation. So
I'm looking
it
at it right now, and it's field site, and site is spelled SIGHT, like you're
Yes.
seeing. So that's
Yeah.
super cool play on words, and
Yep.
it looks like it has lessons for like grades 6 through 8 and 9 through 12, and
Yep.
really cool examples of everything from conservation engineering and some stuff with climate change and seafood and shark
Yep.
advocacy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we
Um,
try to hit the gamut. WCS has a lens that's we use the discover, inspire, protect for conservation. So discover about conservation issues, inspire others to take action, and then protect by taking action yourself. So all of our stories are discover, inspire, protect themed. So they are focused on one or multiple of those lenses to look at conservation. But it's a really cool project, and one, and again, it's completely barrier free. You don't even have to create a login to get to it. It is a nightmare for me to report back to our funders on how many people are using it and where they're using it, but I've had to get creative on how to get the metrics on it. But for me, it's more important to make sure everybody can access it rather than, put it behind a paywall or put it behind a password. You
yeah,
don't use your password and you can't use it.
yeah,
So
I see
yeah.
so I was like, where's the Mongolia one? I see Sustainable Kashmir Project for Mongolia and
Yeah.
some
Yeah,
cool
that one
videos
is
you guys have.
Mongolia. We also just did one called Hulan's Journey East, which is
Okay.
focused on habitat fragmentation on the Hulan, which is the Mongolia wild ass. So that's work that we've done around that. So that's another story that we've told from Mongolia.
Okay.
But anyway, all of this is a way around to say that yeah, my area of kind of expertise in the zoo and aquarium education world is really teacher education, and that's the lens that I use with the work that I do with the International Zoo Educators Association. So, IZE is a nonprofit. It is the education wing of the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums. It's a separate entity, but we have an
Okay.
MOU with WAZA as the education wing and advisors for the World Aquarium or World Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And it is a professional organization for zoo and aquarium and other similar institutions for educators specifically. um, I know educators often feel a little marginalized. We're not the wildlife biologists or the vets or the zookeepers, and we don't get as much support and attention and love. And I think that's what I love about IZE is that it is 100% run by and focused on conservation educators specifically. So
Right.
so I sit on the board for that. I'm the membership coordinator for that. But what's really cool is that we have dozens and dozens of zoos and aquariums around the world that are members that are actively contributing to the work that we do in that. We have hundreds and hundreds of zoo and aquarium educators that are participating. We do conferences, we do a journal. We have professional development training. We do a job exchange program. We have a mentoring program. We have, just really a ton of really amazing resources. In 2020, IZE, many members of IZE were, heavily involved in drafting the very first conservation education strategy
Mm.
that has existed for WAZA. So there is now an existing strategy of best practices with examples from countries all around the world, highlighting the things that we should be doing, that we as a profession have indicated these are best practices in conservation education, and it was really built by the IZE community, and again, it's in dozens of countries. So it's really cool to see what it looks like to implement these different best practices in completely different settings with completely different lenses. So it's a wonderful resource that is also completely free and available. And if you search WAZA Conservation
Yeah.
Education Strategy, it should come straight up. And it's a lovely document that I utilize in almost everything that I do as a conservation educator. When I'm
This is
developing
so cool. Yeah.
programs, yeah,
All right.
yeah.
I've got another tab. So I've got a couple tabs always of your
I'm giving you
recommendations.
homework. That's your job.
Yeah. Waza.org. And it's the education strategy that'll
Yep.
folks to it. And the title I'm seeing is Social Change for Conservation. It
Correct.
looks perfect and very inspiring.
Yeah.
Um, wow, Dave, you're doing a lot of things and you got a lot of
Yeah.
awesome. Um, we're just about out of time. Is there anything else you want to share for anyone listening, thinking about zoo education or AIPWCS or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough time right now, right? It's kind of education isn't always as valued as it should be. There's a lot of question on whether, higher ed is something that's really needed, and it's something really to I imagine many people are really wondering where is their place. And one of the things, and this is actually an organic thing that's going to come up, but yesterday you and I had a meeting talking about recruitment, and one of the things that we talked about as a real reality is that because conservation is such an interdisciplinary discipline, and because there are so many aspects of it, um, so many people have a place in conservation. It goes beyond the like I love to, pull up rocks in the middle of the night with a headlamp and look for salamanders. That's cool, and we need that, and that has to be there. But just as much, we need the people who are like, yeah, I don't want to get my hands dirty, but man, I love a good legal contract. And if I could get my hands on some good, I could help an organization out by being their legal council, I would love to do that. Or you know what I love to do? Create social media content. And I love conservation. And while I don't want to, throw waders on and go seining in Jamaica Bay, I definitely would love to like think about how I could use social media to promote conservation practices and spread awareness. So I think for me, it's a really exciting time to be in education, to be in conservation in general. I've been in the field now for 25 years because I'm old, and it's just changed. And where we are today is I think so much more exciting than where we were 25 years ago. I think the conversations are more robust. I think they're more honest. I think they're really being solutions forward, and I think it's really welcoming in so many diverse perspectives and skill sets to really solve this problem. Again, we caused this problem, so only we can solve this problem, and it's kind of an all hands on deck kind of thing. So I guess it's a long way around to say that, if you're listening to this and you're wondering, do I have a place in conservation, and is Project Dragonfly the right move for it? Um, Yes and yes is the answer to both of those. And reach out and have conversations and get involved and start to think about, what do you want to do. As cheesy as it is, I tell my advisees that their master plan, their final kind of project-based thesis project that they're doing, is it's cheesy, but it's be the change you want to see in this world.
Hmm.
It's this isn't theoretical, this is practical. So what's something that you want to change? Well, this degree and this program will help you make those changes. And there's nothing more rewarding than that.
Yeah, that's those are great words and thoughts for sure. And I agree. It feels like I hope it's becoming the field of conservation is kind of becoming more human aware and sensitive and community aware and sensitive.
Yeah.
I think and a lot of us grew up, watching David Attenborough or Steve Irwin or
Yep.
even Jane Goodall, and like those people were out in the field and doing this research, and it feels like something a lot of people are not sure how they could ever do that, but so many diverse ways. And we have people doing like making children's books and
Yep.
curriculum and connecting with schools and kids and all the things you said, social media and media generally.
Mhm.
Thanks for all you do, Dave,
Oh,
for
thank you.
this program and the various things with the Bronx Zoo and WCS, and for the whole team over there. It's been amazing. Like I started out saying, like for me as a New Yorker, connecting with you
Yeah.
guys and kind of seeing all these cool projects happening. It's really, really awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hi there, folks. Just one more thing before you head on out. If you have a moment, as I mentioned at the beginning, I would love to hear in what ways you are finding this podcast useful, how you listen, what you would like to hear more of, less of, etc. Please feel free to send me any and all feedback, any ideas for guests, etc. to Kevin Madison at my email, which is mattiskc@miamioh.edu. That's spelled MATTESKC @miamioh.edu. Thanks again for listening. Have a great day.